It's just religion. It's just religion.
Hail, brethren. Welcome to this, RS in 5 or less, where verily we seek unto thee that which is right, and render unto the darkness that which is wrong. Some 700 years ago, I, St Thomas Aquinas, wrote a book called Summa Theologica. Whither I did inscribe my just war theory, it occurred to me that sometimes a war may be acceptable, for verily I wish to determine that which made a war good, and that unto which rendered a war evil. Bearing in mind the words of our Lord, that whosoever should draweth the sword shall dieth by the sword, as well as to forgive thine enemies, and the multiple times in the Old Testament scriptures, whereupon the Lord doth ordereth the Israelites to slay many. The first criteria that must be settled is that of a just cause. The reason for going to war must be good in and of itself. This cannot be for things like the gaining of territory or the oppressing of innocents, but may be for things such as self-defense. Secondly, the war must be declared by a legitimate authority. The king or the elected government of the day must be the one to declare the war. It cannot be anybody else, because only the authority that goes to the king is derived from God. Indeed, war in itself is a terrible thing, and so the intentions must be good. The evil done by the war must be outweighed by the good achieved by it. Whither we come into the next criteria, a last resort. War should not be the first port of call, rather the last port of call. If somebody doth offend you, you must use other means to resolve your conflict, such as negotiations or trade delegations. War must be the last and final card to be played, though I do not approve of playing cards. When embarking upon a war, you must have a reasonable chance of success. Do not attempt to take down an enemy of 10,000 with your army of 300, no matter how scarlet your robes or unconvincing your Greek accents. As well as this, the force used in a war must be proportional. It would not be acceptable to burn an entire city in order to capture the 12 soldiers stationed within. Equally, it would be wrong to drop a weapon of mass destruction on an army armed only with sharpened sticks. This would not be proportional. And finally, the innocent should not be harmed. Many unarmed men, women and children have met their deaths in war, and these things cannot be condoned. Whereupon these criteria can be met, then a war could be said to be just, and it might even be the right thing to do. War is a terrible thing, and many Christian thinkers before and after me have condemned it. Our Lord himself is said to be a pacifist. For a video on pacifism, click here. But one must ask, what would happen if we did not go to war? Would a greater evil befall us? Some thinkers may have criticized my just war theory. They may have laughed at the idea that innocents could not be harmed. They may have derided my insistence that force be proportional. Why use proportional force on an enemy, they may say. Also, they say that my 13th century view of warfare does not fit the 21st century view of war. Warfare in the 13th century looks very different from warfare in the 21st century. Terrorism, cyber attacks, weapons of mass destruction were not a factor when I was writing. For an extension, research the Geneva Conventions. Are these a secular attempt at a just war theory? And now, my brethren, before I leave you, some questions for thine to ponder. I, St Thomas Aquinas, say that all these criteria must be met for the war to be just. Is this possible? Is the criticism that the just war theory is not fit for use in the 21st century a valid criticism? Can any theory about war be applied beforehand, or do we have to wait until the war is finished to judge whether or not it was just? And if a war is deemed to not be just, what should be the roles and responsibilities for religious believers today?